All right, welcome back. The Invest America Trump Accounts app going live today, just about a month from the official launch of that program, which means we wanted to hear from Brad Gerstner today. He's with us now as we do count down to July 4th. So we're making these incremental milestone steps towards the big day. What does this mean?
Well, Scott, it's taken us 4 years to get here. Great to be here with you guys. But today, the Invest America Trump Account app launches in both the Google and the Apple app stores. Remember, this is a Treasury account app, totally trustworthy, like Social Security. It's going to be here for a very long time. You need to make sure that every child you know, if you have friends who have children, make sure that every child goes and family goes and downloads this app at either of the app stores, okay? Every child under 2, remember, is going to get $1,000 automatically funded on July 4th. Most kids between the age of 2 and 10 will get at least $250. If they're in a state like Connecticut, they'll get $500, or Indiana, they'll get $500. And kids between the age of 10 and 18 get a free lifetime 401k, right, that they can compound in, where employers are going to be adding money into those accounts, et cetera. There's no investment decision for the parents to make. All the money that goes into these accounts will be invested in the best 500 companies in America. They will be direct shareholders, a little bit of NVIDIA, a little bit of Microsoft, a little bit of Walmart, all the companies that you talk about every day. We're going to get all the people who have felt left out and left behind, what the president calls the Main Street agenda. Every kid on every rural block or every rural street and city block is now going to be a direct shareholder in the upside of America. You and I talked about it 4 years ago. Today is another huge milestone in making this a reality.
You're still pounding the pavement, so to speak, too. I mean, you mentioned what's happening in Indiana, your home state, for those who don't know. On the state level, this has a chance to be pretty significant, too, for those that are going to contribute as well. This is not just a federal thing that we are going to talk about. Tell me more about that, because I'm not sure people fully understand that.
So imagine this. It's a private investment account for every child in America. Anybody can contribute to. Moms and dads can add $5 or $10. Employers can add money to. Philanthropists can add money to. If you start with $1,000 and just add $50 a month, that's $50,000 at 18. That's $175,000 at age 30. So I'll give you an example. I was in Durham, North Carolina on Friday. The mayor of Durham, Leo Williams, wants to get all 40,000 kids in Durham signed up for these Trump accounts. So he's through a big event. I adopted the city, or the school, Murray Massenburg, 700 elementary school kids, and I'm putting an extra $250 into all of their accounts. I just talked to the principal. I said, if you get them all signed up, you tell me the amount of money that I need to send you, and you can deliver it via a QR code directly into the accounts of each of those kids. Everybody in America can do this for their local school. You just raise a little bit of money, you give it to the principal, and the principal transfers it into these individual accounts. So think of this as an open sourced way for every community in America to get their kids off to a great start.
Yeah, amazing. You keep us up to date on all of that as we run right up to the deadline. And they do have a countdown clock here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, which you probably saw when you were last with us on the Cerberus IPO day. Let's talk some stocks, because when you were last on, we talked Snowflake. We knew the earnings were coming. You had said you were still a huge holder of it personally, but no longer in your public fund. My goodness, yes. What's your reaction to this? All you can do is chuckle when you look at moves like this. What's going through your mind when you see that?
First and foremost, when I was on your show, I think you remember that I said, Scott, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I said the data infrastructure companies like Snowflake, Databricks, and ClickHouse, they're all in the token flow. What do I mean by that? As more tokens are consumed, it accelerates their core data business. I suggested I thought they would have a great quarter, and wow, they had a blockbuster quarter. Hats off to the team at Snowflake and to Sridhar for doing this. This is a very different story than software apps like, for example, Salesforce, that more directly compete with the AI model companies. But if you peel back the covers on what they reported, 33% growth, accelerating growth versus consensus of 27% growth. They took up their full year guide by more than their Q1 beat. And the massive beat really came from these two trends. AI is accelerating their core, more tokens, more faster growth in their core. And number two, their products like Snowflake Intelligence and Cortex Code hit a critical mass in Q1. So I expect this growth to continue. We're seeing it as well in other companies that we own, like Databricks and ClickHouse. But Snowflake continues to be a very, very large personal holding for me. We moved out of it in the fund, Scott, because I'm in the business. I have to manage this stuff. Year to date, Snowflake is up 10%, even including today's moves. Compare that what we moved the money into, like Micron, which is up 200% year to date, or ARM, which is up 200% year to date. So for our investors, for our shareholders, that was the right thing for us to do, even though today is an absolute spectacular, well-deserved blockbuster day for Snowflake.
So a couple things. So you're not taking any profits, for example, in the Micron, given the crazy move that we've even seen since we last spoke, just as you said 2 weeks ago. Let me deal with that first, and I have another question about Snow and Databricks.
Right. Yeah. So yes, we are actively managing our portfolio, Scott. I can't give you every tick and trade, but I will say with these parabolic moves, we absolutely are making sure that we're taking down some of our exposure in names that exceed our price targets, rotating it into other names. But remember, on the All In Pod, we have this phrase: "Let your winners run." So a key in this business is that you got to let the best companies continue to compound. You've heard me say it on this show before. A simple heuristic for the people watching at home: think about managing your portfolio in three sizes: small, medium, and large. Okay? And when things are all washed out, when everybody's despondent like they were earlier this year over the start of the Iran war, maybe you take your portfolio to a large position. When everybody gets euphoric, you may want to take your portfolio from that large position to a medium-sized position. In my parlance, I call it 3-6-9, 30%, 60%, 90%. So, of course, when we see these types of moves, we take a little off the table that we can redeploy when we see volatility in the market. That's our job.
So back to Snowflake for a minute, because you put it in the same category as Databricks, which you're an investor in, obviously, and we wait for that to go public too. To what degree is Snowflake, to use the words that Cramer used this morning, coming after Databricks? The competitive angle now, what does that mean?
Well, make no mistake about it, these companies have been competitive from day one. They're run by incredibly competitive people. They do very similar things. But at the same time, this is one of the largest TAMs the world has ever known, intelligence. Every small, medium, and large business in the world is going to consume more tokens in the future, more intelligence in the future. So there's plenty big TAM for both of them to grow very quickly for a long period of time, but they're going to battle it out. I don't think it means that one's going to win and one's going to lose. And don't count out ClickHouse, which may be the fastest growing of the bunch. Which is also one of our shareholdings. We fundamentally believe that data is the oil that runs the AI engine. And these are three of the most important companies in providing the data. So as more tokens are consumed, more data is consumed, and these companies are benefiting from that. And you see it in the results.
Hey, Brad, it's Josh Brown. If, let's say, a hypothetical CNBC viewer with $100,000 in cash for whatever reason, they want to put it into the market. They believe in the AI story. They believe it's secular and it's got years to go. But they're staring down the barrel of an $86 billion IPO raise in the near term, not to mention probably something close when you combine Anthropic and OpenAI, maybe even more. Can the market support that much supply of new tech stock hitting the market at the same time? What would you tell that viewer who's saying, yes, I want to invest, yes, I understand I shouldn't time the market, but I feel like there are 3 asteroids headed for Earth, and maybe I should wait till after. How would you think about that if you were that viewer?
Yeah, Josh, great question, and I loved your earlier commentary on Snowflake. Let's just say this. Today is not the day that you shove all in on the market. Go back to the heuristic I used, 3-6-9. And let's say you have 0 in the market today and you want to put $100,000 to work, then I would put 3, right? I would put 30% of that to work, because you have to start at some point and then you wait for your moments. yes, we have incredible IPOs coming, starting with SpaceX, rumored on June 12th. Hopefully, I'll be back in the New York Stock Exchange with you guys. It's going to be an incrable IPO. It's going to raise about $75 billion. Okay, so if Altimeter, and we do want to buy the SpaceX IPO, I've got to raise that money from somewhere. So I've got to sell some other stocks in order to buy SpaceX. That's just the way it works. We don't have unlimited capital. And when Anthropic comes public in the fall, or OpenAI comes public in the fall, I'm going to have to sell something else to buy this. So your point is certainly correct. But the only thing I would say, Josh, is remember the depth of our capital markets. I mean, we're talking 100 trillion relative to $75 billion. So in the grand scheme of things, I think particularly because we're going to have early adoption, early inclusion in the index for SpaceX, I think there's going to be enough capital to do that. But the bigger risk right now is simply that we've come a long way quickly. Right? We could have a 10 to 20% consolidation in the SOX or these other technology and AI markets, and that would be a run-of-the-mill consolidation. So you want to make sure that if you're watching at home, you have some cash on the sideline. So when the market comes in, the secular trend doesn't change. AI is where you want your money, but you have some more dry powder to buy those things.
Look, the one thing I'm thinking about with the inclusion of the indices, and Brad, I'd like your opinion on this, is the weighting in the indices, because they're going to have a market cap, SpaceX, $1.5 trillion, and yet at least with the triple Qs, they're talking about something like 3 times the float. Do you see any discrepancy in that? Does that lead to more upside if the float becomes bigger and they can add more to the indices? Just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've seen a lot of analysis on this, Jim. It frankly is a little too complex, I think, for most of the viewers at home, and even for myself. I'm not going to try to game that. All I know is this. There's no human being on the planet that is better at turning electrons into tokens than Elon Musk. Right? Let me say that again. Because we focus a lot on the launch business. We focus a lot on the communications business, right, which is Starlink, which we all benefit from. But Elon is building the biggest data centers on Earth and eventually in space of anybody, and nobody is better at turning those electrons into tokens. That is an extraordinarily valuable place to sit. He just struck a huge deal with Anthropic. I think more deals are to come, and that, from my perspective, totally changed the game on the SpaceX IPO. I knew that the launch business was great. I knew that Starlink was great, but that alone would not justify the valuation. Him building the data centers which are going to power all of AI, and him then using those to train up his own AI with incredible team that he acquired from Cursor, I think is a total game changer for the IPO and puts them in a really good position.
Wow, okay, you come sit with us mid-June. We'll do what we did for Cerebras. That was fun, and I appreciate the visit today.
It's great to be here. Everybody go out, download your Trump account, right? This is forever for your kids. Get them on the right path to compounding. Make them a shareholder in America. Thank you, Scott.
All right, Brad Gerstner, we'll talk to you soon.